taking this forward, we thought that it's important to also involve parents in this conversation. So while I think many of us being adults do feel that sexuality education is important, there's some kind of, reluctance. So we at Tashi thought it very pertinent to create such spaces where parents and caregivers could come and share their views and have such open discussions. So the aim of the event is for us to break the silence and also to be able to understand what challenges that we face. We have our panelists here who will, through their personal journeys, we'll probably be able to take away some strategies, and it will also lead us to open the doors for us to be able to talk about sexuality with our children. How many of you are parents in this audience? Okay, that's not a very big number. So, and among you parents, how many of you do initiate such conversations with children? That's again not a big number. So we clearly see that many of us seem to be a little clueless about, maybe clueless, I'm just assuming, about talking about sexuality.
Hello everyone, I'm Kaveri. I'm at a very crucial stage of parenting right now. My daughters are 15 and 13, so you can imagine, so they're just stepping into teens and the whole gamut. So how to initiate a conversation with the children? There's no particular time, like you choose 5 o'clock in the evening, today I'm going to talk to my child. You have to find teachable moments throughout their childhood. From the time they're 2, from the time they're 5, 6, you talk to them in age-appropriate ways about sex and sexuality. But at this stage, when they start discovering it on their own, it's very important to guide them in the right direction. That's what I... And with girls, it's a little easier because we have to talk to girls about menstrual hygiene. So that's a very, very, big teachable moment, actually, to start talking about these matters.
Great. Thanks. My name is Shotindro Sen. And if that's too difficult for most of you, if you are North Indians, then Satinder will do perfectly fine. Yeah. I am a dad to a 12-year-old who's sometimes going on 45, sometimes going on 3. It depends on, the time. I'm also a father to a little dog. And there's no conversation there, but you have to look after her health as well. I'm actually far more nervous talking about sex and sexuality in this room than I am with my daughter. Yeah, that's a comfortable relationship. And I have to be honest, while she's 12 and, the conversations have to happen, she actually initiated the conversation. I didn't. So it's a funny story. I'll start off keeping in mind that there are young folks out here. So, I was driving a car and she was sitting next to me. This is many years back. Shohini, who's my wife, who's right here, wasn't in town. So she turned to me and said, "Baba, will you buy me a measuring tape?" I was, justifiably a little confused. So I said, "Why do you want a tape?" And she looked at me and said, "Baba, trainer bras are very important in life." Right? So that was really what initiated my first conversation with her. So she made it comfortable. So, I can take it from there. But, I'm very blessed that here is a person who can articulate stuff and has the language to do so. I think when I was young, we didn't have the language and our parents didn't have the language to articulate this stuff. Most of the stuff sounds terrible in Hindi or in Bengali. Correct? English, most of the stuff sounds better. So I'm blessed that we have a common language in which having the conversation is much easier.
Hi, I'm Rima. I am a child sexual abuse educator. I write poetry and I also do creative writing, storytelling workshops for kids. And I'm a single parent. And that sort of aspect of my personality tends to overshadow almost the rest of it because it becomes challenging at times. I have been talking to my son about sexuality, gender abuse. He's 9 now, from the time he was 3 years old. And he has this very outrageous sort of ability to completely gobsmack me with the kind of questions that he comes up with the kind of comments that he makes sometimes in public, which used to make me uncomfortable and embarrassed at times. And I wouldn't know what to do. So I decided to teach myself, to learn more. And while I was doing that, there were 2 major challenges that I felt that, I needed to overcome, both as a parent and as an educator. The first one was the complete lack of any kind of groundwork on sexuality education from the community that I was in, from the schools that I went to. I am from a relatively conservative family, and we didn't talk about things like sex and, sexuality and all of that, and gender and abuse. So yeah, that was tough. So I had to do a lot of reading, I had to do a lot of research, which is a lot more easier now with wonderful resources. And there are videos on YouTube, there are so many good books, especially TARSHI'S resources are wonderful. And so that sort of made it easier with time. The second bigger challenge was overcoming what I have termed the horror factor. This very innate Indian tendency to react to any such situation, any such conversations with "Hi Ram," that kind of shock and just a complete bafflement and outrage. And that immediately shuts off children and fills them with a sense of shame and guilt. That is something I think all of us as parents and regular adults need to overcome. And but in the beginning, when he was 3 or 4 and he started, there was this one instance that I remember when I saw him fiddling with his penis when he was really little, and I was a little freaked out. I didn't know what to do. But then I looked at him and saw that, that it's a very normal activity for boys that young, even younger. It's just their way of exploring their bodies. So yeah, I've just completely learned to mute my own responses and listen. So that solves almost every problem.
So I'm not a parent, but I actually do a lot of trainings around gender and sexuality, and I end up being the cool aunt and the cool teacher, because clearly I can say all the things that parents find difficult to say. But what for me is astounding is how little we actually talk about what the sexual act is. So everybody has some crazy notions. I've learned to actually talk about penis and vagina like I'm talking about my toothbrush and toothpaste. And I was deeply gratified, Rima, to hear you say penis and not say down there or whatever. So I'm like, oh yay, world is changing. Because I think the moment you start saying, when they're saying they're talking about sex and they're looking coy, then you can actually say penis and vagina and just get away with it. So that's one. The second, actually, which is far scarier for me, is the kind of information that they're getting out of television serials and the authority with which they are telling you that that is the truth. So for me, that's the challenge, which is, one is the horror factor, and the second is, let me tell you all that I know, and it's always better than what you know. And the third is the misinformation in schools, where you are actually talking to them about reproduction in this completely mechanical fashion. So you have to use sanitary napkins, but you don't know where you're supposed to use them.
I had this conversation with my brother as well. I said that, you need to be careful, and you need to take care of the lady in question, and also that one doesn't kiss and tell. That was extremely important, because boys are not told the nuances of, how things proceed, when one has a romantic liaison, so to speak. So yeah, it really did help.
We all understand that sexuality education is extremely important, and it also makes children more confident and also have a more healthy and a happy life, for them to be able to decide on their choices, so that they know that they have some well-informed choices that they can make.
I don't think there's any, set alarm clock that suddenly goes off when you're bringing up a child. Today is the day. Today is when you have to talk, like, Kaveri mentioned earlier. But I think it's easier with girls. That's what people assume, that when they start menstruating, you've got an opportunity to talk about it. Even I think that approach itself is also slightly flawed, because you need to lay down groundwork and, rules, not rules, but education and all of that a little before that happens, so that the child is prepared, so that you're prepared. In case of boys, I think it's slightly more difficult, because there is no obvious indication that they need something like that. But, when we talk about sexuality education, we also tend to assume that it's only related to sex and the act and all of that. But it is very, very multi-layered. It has, you need to talk about abuse awareness, you need to talk about gender and consent awareness, which is so important and entirely lacking everywhere. So I think the right age to start talking about this would be 3 to 4, depending on what the child needs to know then. So if my child is 3 or 4, I would like him or her to know about abuse awareness. Basic body safety rules that can be taught to kids as young as that. And as you move, as they grow older, there will be ample opportunities to begin a conversation, and opportunities will present themselves, because children are curious. And if you have made sure that you've created a sort of warm listening atmosphere in the house, they will come to you. But that's the first thing that you need to do. Just create this habit of listening with attention, with respect, and not responding with your own preconceived notions about sexuality. And if you do that and keep in mind how they're growing, what they're looking at, what makes him or her uncomfortable, and what is he thinking about, then you'll have ample opportunities. For example, my son who's 9, he's addicted to Harry Potter. And a few weeks ago, we were watching the last series. And there's this very uncomfortable scene. For him, it's uncomfortable. When the lead characters are seen kissing. I could see him shifting, and I knew that he'd say something to me. And when it ended, he sort of said, why do they have to ruin everything with that? Why did they just not remain friends? I mean, it's just gross. So I had to do 2 things to make sure that he understood that this is normal. This is acceptable. This is what 2 people who've grown up in love, who want to be together, do. They do to express their love and affection for each other. But also make sure that he understood consent. This is something you do in a consensual relationship. This is something for which you're sort of responsible when it comes to the other person. So yeah, just look at everything that comes up as an opportunity, and as they grow.
I honestly think that's a tough question. The child is often more comfortable speaking to one parent. It's possible. There could be many reasons for it, right? If both of you have a very comfortable relation, she will, talk about it to both of you. But I think, what she said is absolutely appropriate. If you have a reasonable relationship, if you allow her to talk to you about many things, then she'll talk about this too with you as well. Yeah, I mean, and for example, the kids these days possibly see so much more than we did. I'm 52 years old. My daughter's 12. She has 2 friends who have cut themselves, right? Which is, I'm 52 years old. I actually have read about this in Joe Nesbo books, but I've never seen anybody who's cut themselves. So she's already been through that experience. When she talks about it, I think it's about being respectful, listening. I really don't have a solution. I've never even been through that experience. And that allows her to talk to me. I think it's as much a dad's duty to be, to provide that closeness and comfort, because working moms or even otherwise, the mom's not going to be around all the time, nor are you going to be around all the time. So it's best that she has many options in terms of dealing with it.
I'm sure we understand that sexuality is much more than all this. It's just not to do with physical changes or puberty. It starts at a very young age, as Rima says, and then there are also other issues like relationships, body image, and gender issues like identification, gender roles. So what other themes have you been able to talk to with your girls?
Actually, trust me, by 10, they have a fair amount of idea what it's all about. By 10, and maybe earlier. Because
how do you think they get that idea?
Because they're exposed to so much of overt as well as subliminal messages from the media, from TV, from magazines, from the peer group, from internet. They're bombarded from all sides. So they do have an idea of what's going on. And they'll test your curiosity, your limit also. They'll, come up with little, some hints here, there, wanting to. That is when you should take it and, make it a teachable moment, like I say. With my daughters, it came when they had to go off to the boarding school. I didn't want anything to come as a surprise for them. They were 10 and 11 at that point of time. I thought I must tell them, and my way of talking to them used to be to take them on a walk, 20 minutes with one child, 20 minutes with another. So it's just a one-on-one, just the 2 of us kind of time. And also, it's just a biology class if you're going to teach them about contraception and the bodily functions. It's much more than that. Talking about sexuality is much more than that. You are basically chalking out a model framework as well in transmitting your values and what you expect out of your child. And a lot of people are hesitant to talk to children about all these things because they feel it will trigger a curiosity. Trust me, they're already curious. You're only satiating that curiosity, telling them that this is what it is, and expecting appropriate behavior from them regarding this. If you don't talk to them, who's going to tell them what is appropriate, what is not?
Many people are under the assumption that once you start talking about sexuality education to children, right then they're going to go and experiment sex. But research has proved in fact, that it has only helped them sometimes to understand about it, and probably also help them to postpone their engagement. And people who are already in such sexual engagement, it gives them a way to have a safe sex.
And you have to educate yourself, in terms of if it's about a Japanese manga comic, then you have to sort of educate yourself as to what's happening in Japan. And sometimes maybe the message that you give them is not so Japan friendly, but you tell them that this is the way it is, right? And so there are these conversations where, but again, if you don't stay engaged with the kid, you'll never know. So censoring, to my view, is not a particularly good idea when the kid is growing up, because that will just lead to what happened to us when we were young. We just had outlets which were really incorrect, and many people have paid the price in the longer run.
I must mention, my daughter wrote to me from the boarding school once, and her letter mentioned, Mama, the boys in our class, they were 12 plus then, asked us girls, do you all know what porn is? So she didn't even know the spelling, she spelled it P-O-N. And so that made me sit down and, think they've already been exposed to this at 12. And the girls were not, but the boys apparently were.
Sure.
Yeah. So conversations are very important. She had the confidence to ask me that question instead of trying to look for an answer elsewhere.
It's very important to sort of lay down a groundwork of rules about cyber safety, about what kind of information you're going to share on the net with other people, that you're not supposed to give out personal information like phone numbers and house addresses and things like that.
When you're speaking to them, if you tell them that you have been through the same kind of shit and you have failed, so that you no longer appear like a superhero to them, then it's far easier to get them to accept it. If you're telling them that, this has never happened to me and, I'm, above all, then they're going to put the barriers up.
That's true, very.
I think the counter narrative here, which we don't often say, is very important to say. Children see one kind of family, children see one kind of sexuality, mostly what is there in the mainstream. There is a need to kind of introduce slowly, the counter narratives which we don't talk about. And sometimes, topical events, things that are, being shown on television as part of your everyday news can be really helpful. So, with my daughter about 2 years ago, one day she came and asked me what is 377, and then I had to tell her, explain the whole, narrative to her. So that made it a lot more easier for me to really kind of look at it from a legal, clinical point of view, and then just, talk to her about different kinds of love that is there. So I think there is a need to, with, things that children see all the time and things they don't see, I think there's a need to kind of bring that thing out with them often.
It's also important to convey a message which is not fear-based and which is affirmative by nature, and is not just about, many times we see in the schools, they would come in approaches because there's some sexual harassment or a sexual abuse that happens, and that's the very reason that they want to have a sexuality education. But if sexuality is seen above, abuse, and is also seen in an affirmative way, and there are many other things apart from abuse that we need to talk about while we talk to our children. And also to be able to see gender just not in binary, but to be able to see it as a fluidity, and how we are able to at least, as you say, convey other narratives and show some videos or talk about few people, and at least they are aware of parallel things that are happening in the world. Girls do not have as much as accessibility to internet or other gadgets as much as boys would have sometimes. So also the kind of restrictions or the way that we bring up our girls to say that this is not something that is more pleasurable, and the boys are more it's okay for boys to talk about it, and it's okay for boys to even express their desires, but generally girls are hardly given space to have that kind of expression. So that could also be a reason why there's a difference between what they seek and how they process these information.
One of the reasons why boys only have sort of these outlets outside of the house is because we don't talk to them. We don't talk to them at all. We'll tell our girls what not to do, how not to dress, how not to be, provocative or whatever. But we will never tell our boys about consent, about respect, about treating women with respect, giving them the same space, the same kind of privacy that, we would expect our girls to maintain all the time. So no wonder then that they go out of the house and they look for whatever they're looking for because they're so curious. So we need to introspect a little bit on that. Because if we have, if we have boys and we talk to them about this regularly, like I do with my son, so, what are the chances that he'll go and he'll see something and he'll not recognize for what it is, which is a very, male-dominated representation of sexuality?
So my daughter goes to a fairly well-known school, so I won't take the name because that may be unfair. We had this incident 2 years back. She was carrying a book, which is, what was the name of the book? Our Bodies, for girls, right? It's a book about the pink book. Yeah, there's a pink book for girls about their bodies and growing up. One of her friends had reached puberty, and my daughter hadn't, but she had read the book, so she knew all about it. So when this other girl reached puberty, she actually took the book to the class to share with her, right? The Hindi teacher, and I only say it's the Hindi teacher because it was the Hindi teacher, this is not a reference to the cow belt morality, actually caught her, took the book away, told her, what kind of parents do you have who give you a book like this? This, of course, gave me enough ammunition to go and have a lovely time with her later on. But having said that, what's happening is the schools also finally hire teachers from the societies that we come from, right? They're not going to get it from other parts of the society. So there is a mixture of people who are going to be liberal and allow the kids to talk about it, and there's going to be a bunch of people. So the kids also get messages that are conflicting, right? Second, the education that they went through in the class was incredibly clinical. It was the male part and the female part like a plug and so on and so forth, right? Which, didn't make much sense to her, didn't talk to her emotions, or, in fact got into a horror moment rather than anything else. So I just think that maybe there is a lot more about it today than it was in my time, for sure, in terms of conversation and education. But, your child needs to be able to talk to you about it so that you can, in a sense, layer that conversation away from just the rationale to the emotional as well.
I think one of the reasons why we feel or our kids feel that it's too much is probably the tone that the school is setting when they talk about sexuality education. They're probably limited to abuse and, get at it from a very fear-based, negative sort of tone. And that puts children off. It's very, very important to include that. But the emphasis should be on sexual well-being, on comfort, on relationships, on warmth, on empathy. So if you include one section which is slightly uncomfortable with a whole lot of other padding, so to say, it doesn't come as such a shock. It's not as repulsive, So maybe that's what's happening.
So when we go to schools, in fact, the first thing that the teachers say, because it's usually a mix of teachers teaching different subjects, oh, the biology teacher is here, so this is completely for her. So the assumption, like Shotendro and Rima said, is that it's all about the body and the body functions and bodily fluids and so on. And it's only when we start discussing about what sexuality is all about, the variety of topics that it encompasses, that teachers realize that all of them are qualified to have that conversation. It's not just the biology teacher, and that sexuality encompasses so much more than simply the body, emotions, consent, body image, how you think about yourself, relationships. So all of these comprise sexuality, and it takes us a couple of good discussions to get this point across to teachers. So teachers also have to battle a lot of these things, and it takes them some time to get over it. So unfortunately, a lot of discussions in schools tend to be on the medical issues, so which is why probably young people feel that, oh my God, I'm getting too much of sexuality education. But what we also emphasize to teachers is to not have it as a one-off conversation, but that it's constant, it's ongoing.
And we all also understand that we as parents we can't just have like one capsule solution. Like, okay, this is what I did with my child, and so this is how you should also talk to your child. All of us come from various backgrounds, various cultures, and we all hold different family values. So, of course, if we start to need talking about children, about sexuality, we need to kind of push our comfort zone, which is, I think we should be prepared to do that. And also, it's important sometimes to understand, read books, have the right sources which would help us, guide us, talk about sexuality in a less fear, in a less fear kind of, which is not like, which is more affirmative in nature. So these are few things that I think you would have carried away from this discussion. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, panelists, for taking out your time and sharing your experiences. And also, thanks so much for you all to have come here and shared your own experiences. Please make sure that you have a look at our publications while you go. And if there's anything more that you want to know, you can log in our website